All right, we are back. It's Wednesday night, and we have a charger. We're going to be able to make it a long time tonight. I probably won't hang out the full 2 hours, but I will hang out a good while with you guys and run through lots of questions. Appreciate everybody's patience on Monday. Hopefully, you enjoyed the Minions background. I do have a special chair for you guys tonight. So this is my, I don't even know what to call it, but like groove and all the people. Actually, who has the best chair? I don't know if you guys watch him or not. Mel Carmide. Mel has the best chair for his videos. So I'm channeling my inner Mel tonight. I don't know if you guys want that or not. But shout out to Mel Carmide. Good people out there. We will be in Atlanta next week for the mastermind event. I don't know if Mel's out that way or not. I think he's here in Florida, which is where I am currently, but we will be up there for the mastermind event next week on the 30th. If you do want to attend that, if you want to come hang out with cool people that have similar core values, beliefs, and investments, you can go check that out over there at beyondbroke.com. Glad I reminded myself. We are done. We have the rebrand. We are live. So if you want to go check out dag.com, we have the 3-letter domain. It is live. The new website is up. All of our products and services are in one streamlined website for you guys, which is fantastic. We've operated under, a couple of different brands over the past 3 years. We have Digital Family Office, we have Digital Wealth Partners, we have Azure Legacy, which was our insurance side of the business. All of that is now rebranded under DAG. So we have DAG Private Client, we have DAG Family Office, we have DAG Wealth, and then we also have DAG Insurance. We will continue to add to the breadth of companies and solutions that we bring to market here in 2026 and also into the future. But really cool to see that finally come together. That was a big lift by our team. Shout out to everybody that works at Digital Ascension Group and all the effort that was put in over the last, we probably decided on this in February this year. So it's been a 5-month ordeal to get everything as far as compliance and the regulatory components, all the back-end systems and everything streamlined there. We brought on a bunch of other executives from other really established players, including Gemini, Grayscale, US Bank, and a few others in order to be able to get this across the line. So just want to say thank you publicly to everybody that works on our team that has been part of the rebrand and has helped coordinate that across the org to be able to get it across the line. So big transition for us, much more of an institutional look, which is what we are in the market to become and what we are doing. And really excited about it. So if you want to go check it out, I've always said go to this.com or that.com. Everything is now at dag.com. So we'll get into the stuff you guys came here for, which is the macro and all the other fun stuff out there in the market. I'm going to start off. Again, I'm channeling my inner Mel Carmide tonight. I don't know if you guys just saw the tweet that David Schwartz put out. Come on. If you haven't seen it, go look at it. He's talking about how high gas prices are, which they are. We've got all of that going on in the Middle East. We've got the other Strait shut down. They're blowing up ships. The Houthis are stopping traffic for the Red Sea. That's another 5 million barrels per day that's no longer coming onto the market. But David posted gas prices, assuming this is in California, of $5.89 at the pump. So if you have any idea of the lore around XRP, if you wanted to stir the pot, he is definitely doing it. Or maybe that's a tell. Maybe things are about to shift here, and that's what we'll get into. So again, appreciate you taking time out of your evening to come hang out with me, ask great questions. And this is probably a good time for my disclaimer. Nothing here is financial advice. It's only for entertainment and educational purposes. You should always speak with a financial advisor before making any investment decisions. Any opinions stated here tonight are my opinions. They are not the opinions of Digital Ascension Group or any of our subsidiaries. So without further ado, where are we at on the macro? Well, I just talked about oil. We continue to see yen versus crude continue to climb, yen versus Brent continue to climb. And same thing is now happening across the world in other currencies. The pound is also, losing ground. Our treasuries here in the U.S. are climbing. People are selling U.S. treasuries, driving the price of treasuries up. They are doing that in order to be able to offset their own currencies, including the yen. Primarily, the Bank of Japan selling U.S. treasuries to strengthen their currency against ours, which is causing bond yields to rise on our side, which is actually like counterintuitive because that strengthens our dollar against their yen. They're backed into a position here where they're going to have to raise interest rates. I don't know if they're going to be able to kick the can to the end of this month. I don't really see a situation where they can. And if we do get a big move in oil, if the market actually realizes that there's not enough supply out there to cover the demand that's going on, then we are going to see another big spike. I think, we'll see if this plays out or not, but Trump could just go ahead and say, look, we're cutting off the rest of the world. We are currently the world's largest exporter for oil to other countries. And if we decide that our reserves are too low, they're the lowest that they've been since 1983 here in the U.S. If they become too low, they will have to stop exporting oil, and that will absolutely have an effect on other economies globally in their ability to source energy while this conflict is ongoing. So if that were to take place, that could be the Trump card that causes everything to, cascade that we've been talking about, all the dominoes to fall. If you haven't ever seen my domino theory, please go check it out. I've got 4 different iterations over here on YouTube. But basically it is, a series of events that leads to significantly higher prices for XRP, where global macroeconomic events require a new standard to be moved in. And I do believe that is the perfect storm that we are on the precipice of this evening here in July. So again, could they push it out till August? They have their meeting on the 31st. I'm not seeing it. It would be unprecedented for the Bank of Japan to come out and have an emergency meeting. They have never done that before. They've always done it on a regular scheduled cadence. And so I am calling for something that has never happened before, but I also called for the Strait of Hormuz to be shut down, which has only happened one time in the past, long time ago, and that actually took place too. So we will see if I call it right. Clarity Act is another one that I've called that, I said was not going to get passed. I'm still in that camp. A lot of people revising their, percentage that they think it's going to get passed. I'm actually going to come up on my percentage a little bit. I've been very negative up to this point that we would not see the Clarity Act passed. And I'm still in that camp. It was 98% that we weren't going to see it. Today we had Jim Cramer come out and say that he thinks it's impossible for it to get passed. Reverse Cramer is like a hard thing to overcome. So I'm going to revise. I'm going to say that I'm 90% that the Clarity Act does not pass. I'm going to say there's a 10% chance that it does here in the next 15 days. I'm not optimistic, but I'm slightly more optimistic that we may see things turn around here before they take the August recess. Again, compounding on the fact that I think there will be a catalyst that forces them to act quickly. They did get the SAVE Act, through in another bill. And now we have, it's going to be rough. They've got to get through the filibuster. They've got to get 60 Democrats to vote with them on the new ethics portion, which a lot of them disagree with, for the Clarity Act. They then have to push it to a full vote for the Senate and get that done. They then have to go to the House and get that vote through, and then it's got to go to the president's desk. The only way, and again, I think that there's going to be a large catalyst that is a forcing factor here. We've got Nigeria, we've got Russia, we've got Japan, we've got multiple other nations issuing their clarity around digital assets and how they're going to operate with those in their economy. That alongside, I do think this perfect storm is going to play out here where there needs to be a transition, and we are going to need some guidance around that for financial institutions to really adopt this at scale. Still waiting on the OCC to issue their guidance around stablecoins, alongside the Treasury, FinCEN, FINRA, and other regulators that are required on that side. The Fed as well was the other one I'm missing. Warsh said that they are rushing to get that through by the 18th. Obviously, that didn't happen. That was the 1-year statutory limit. We talked about that Monday. Again, with the technical difficulties Monday, I don't know how many people caught it or not, but they shouldn't be more than a couple weeks behind on that. And then on the other side of that, there is 120 days until it, becomes law. They also, if they don't get that passed in a reasonable time frame, July 18th, 2027, that does go into full effect. So, I'm going to go back to this again. Monica Long stated earlier this year that 2026 would be the year for full-scale institutional adoption of XRP and the XRPL. We got the DTCC tokenizing stocks. They're going fully live in October. You got SWIFT continuing to make announcements that they are moving to real-time settlement. I think we're on the precipice of it here, but you do have to have liquidity in XRP for all of this to work. Just period. There's not another way that it's going to work if there's not enough liquidity in the asset. And so I do think that these, macro events that I've been talking about for over 2 years now, that we're on the precipice of, are going to play out. And that's what's going to push the price substantially higher in order for them to be able to use this as the instrument on the back end for them to have institutional adoption and settlement of distributed ledger technology. So that's the state of affairs. That's where things are at. I haven't seen a whole lot of other crazy stuff going on out there in the market, but I have been a little preoccupied today, both with work and then also spending time with my family here in Orlando. So got some super chats that I did miss Monday. I'm going to run through those and then we'll get into the ones tonight. Again, appreciate y'all taking time out of your Wednesday to come hang out with me. My wonderful wife with the tea. Also got you guys a cool coffee cup from here at Universal. At least I think it's cool. Also has ET on this side.
Oh, no.
With the moon. All right. We'll go ahead and jump into these other super chats here real quick. This one's from Lucas. He says, my brother appreciates everything that you do. Hey, brother, appreciate everything you do. Appreciate you, man. I've been watching you since the beginning. I do my own research like you always suggest. All AI platforms are telling me the same thing. The IMF does not take control of the BOJ after 6 interventions. They only make strong recommendations, and the BOJ can repeatedly intervene in the currency markets. There's a certain stipulation where if they intervene so many times within a certain period that they will step in. And, that may be how they step in, is they make really strong recommendations. What the IMF does, for those that don't know, if you go back to Bretton Woods in 1944, John Maynard Keynes actually proposed the Bancor coin, which would have been, it's pretty much the ESDR that exists today. It's a basket of currencies that are weighted based on GDP globally. There are currently 6 currencies that sit in that basket. I don't think XRP is the ESDR. I think that it becomes a currency in that basket. Liechtenstein or Luxembourg are the 2 economies that I think may adopt XRP as their currency. And once that happens, it can then be included in the basket. The IMF also rolled out a white paper in 2014 where they alluded to an exchange rate peg, which they abbreviated as XRP in that paper. And shortly after that, Ripple rebranded Ripples after it was originally XNS, which is what XRP was minted as. It was gifted to Ripple Labs. They changed it to Ripples. And then, now it's XRP after 2014. But they still use drops as the, smallest form of payment on the network, similar to Satoshis for Bitcoin. But all that to say, I do think that the IMF is definitely involved here. There are pictures of Brad Garlinghouse when he met with Christine Lagarde, when she was the head of the IMF from 2017, before she became the head of the ECB, where she sits now. And again, plans take a long time to implement. But if the IMF were to get involved with Japan, they may strongly suggest that they start using XRP if there's enough liquidity in it for the help to help manage the crisis in the FX market that I do think is coming. Second question, he says the OCC didn't meet their July 18th deadline. Typical, laugh out loud. Thoughts now? I know you believe the catalyst will start the unwind. I do, but we do need stablecoin regulation around all of this for the banks to have oversight and also feel comfortable issuing stablecoins at scale. If they don't have that guidance, I don't think that they're going to be able to move. Could that happen very quickly now? For sure, right? It could have happened quickly, going up into the 18th. If there is a circumstance in the market that requires their action to issue that guidance, I think that they could do it at the drop of a hat at this point, and allow banks to move forward and issue stablecoins at scale to soak up the treasuries that are going to move on to the market when the reverse carry trade unwinds. So, like I mentioned before, they've been very methodical about this. If you watch my first video on the domino theory, I thought that it could be a systemic event that required a lot of action in a short period of time. They've been able to drag this out and be very methodical and make sure everything's in place. So it wouldn't surprise me to see them issue that guidance before all this happened. But with that being the last piece that I think needs to take place, it also doesn't mean that that wouldn't be a drop in the bucket and easy for them to do in the moment when it all does unfold. Jan, the Islander, says, "Hey Jakey, if I have been paying for my XRP on my personal account because Crypto.com doesn't allow business accounts, I took your advice and set up an LLC. How can I withdraw my XRP after price appreciation without the bank freezing my account? Thanks for everything." So I think I actually answered this one, but this is a good question I think is really relevant for a lot of people. Again, not financial advice. Do your own research, listen to other people. There are a lot of people with different opinions than me out there. I'm not the end all be all. But if we do see, I think when we do see significant price appreciation, banks are still a little bit behind the curve. And if you're moving large amounts of money from your personal exchange account into those accounts and you don't have an established reputation with them for large amounts of money, they're likely going to flag it and freeze it. They are still concerned about crypto. If you use JP Morgan or Bank of America or one of the larger banks that are out there and you are wiring money to a crypto exchange, they may debank you. That has happened to me a couple times. So, just be aware of that. Mercury's been good. Old Glory's good. I think Capital One has been good for some people. So again, not making recommendations on where you should structure accounts. If you do have a business account, it's going to be much less likely that they are going to, do those things, setting up an LLC. And the longer that you've had the accounts, the better it's going to be. So ideally for your situation, Crypto.com does not do business accounts. And this has been a friction that we've had for our business. Uphold, worked with us to structure this for the DAG app. It's been not easy to get those accounts through even with them. Kraken has been a good partner. If you do need to set up a business account with them for larger trades, they can absolutely do that. Coinbase is a beating. I wouldn't even attempt it, to be honest with you. I've gone through it and it is very difficult. Kraken would probably be my recommendation for a business account if you were going to structure one somewhere and you could move your XRP there and then set up a business bank account associated with the LLC that you've structured at one of the banks that I mentioned in order to be able to, take the money out of that exchange if you do plan on taking significant profits on the upside, which again, never go broke taking profits. This person over here on TikTok has asked about Robinhood. I'm not going to talk bad about anybody. I would just say, we've had a lot of people that have worked with Robinhood that have found it difficult to take their assets off there. Now, when it comes to selling and offboarding cash, I think Robinhood's probably okay for that. But large amounts, you still may have frictions with your bank. So what I've seen happen with Robinhood is if you do have a large portion of your XRP or other digital assets over there, if you do go to remove a decent chunk of it, they will then lock your account where you can only move like $5,000 worth per day. Webull, both Robinhood and Webull, and really any exchange, you don't have any ownership of those assets. You are a creditor to them. They can take them, they can do whatever they need to with them in the moment that they need them. So just be aware of that. If you are holding your assets on an exchange, you are subject to their choices. So again, not saying that they would do that, or I'm just saying, read the contract that you're signing when you set those accounts up, and you would understand that they're not your assets, they're their assets, and they're allowing you to invest in that through their platform. But they really kind of owe you just the cash that you invested in whatever it was. Webull, I actually really like Webull for trading stocks. When I was trading stocks in 2020, that's what I used. And you can do pre and post market on there. And I'm sure things have progressed on other platforms since 2020. Robinhood may allow the same thing now. I haven't traded stocks in a long time. We will be getting back into that on the other side of price appreciation. You guys know I'm here for ROI and asymmetric bets. So the channel will change some. I'll be talking about different things that I'm investing in. Again, not giving you guys financial advice in any capacity. I can talk about my situation. And if you want to talk to one of our advisors at DAG Wealth, they can help you navigate, what's right for you in your portfolio. But, stocks, commodities, real estate, private equity, private credit, holistic, portfolio management is probably going to have a slice in each one of those. I will say that, most of the family offices that we consult with and work with still have a certain expertise or edge in a certain industry. So they tend to invest in that area. Some of them are, deep tech. Some of them are commodities. Some of them are real estate and oil. Oil's another really good opportunity. Same thing with data centers, raw land. There's a lot of things that you can invest in that do have good long-term outlooks that also provide you some tax benefits in the short term. So we'll be talking a lot about all those things, including digital assets, where we're at on the macro side, and anything else that we're looking at, post PA. But back to the question in hand, yeah, I would set up at least one or two exchange accounts for your business, and probably a couple bank accounts for your business as well, if you just want to have optionality in case something were to happen. The last one from Monday that I missed was the bearded boat guy. What's up, dude? He says, hey, Jake, Carbon One LLC Trust. If I bought XRP personally, then transferred it to my LLC, does the original purchase date for capital gains stay the same, or does it reset? So it depends on how you transferred it. If it's a single member LLC and you listed the cost basis at which you purchased it in the capital contribution, then it would maintain, that date on when you originally made the purchase. If you have set up a partnership, if you have done it a different way, or you listed a different cost basis, and this may also be advantageous for people. So I just want to make this clear too, because you might want to take advantage of it. Let's say you bought XRP at $1.80. You bought it at the end of last year, and now you're just now transferring it into an LLC. You could, if you were okay with resetting the time clock, contribute that LLC at the lower cost basis. Doesn't matter 70 cents if we're going to significantly higher prices, maybe not. But what that would allow you to do is you could kind of weigh that. You could say, okay, do I want the time frame at the higher cost basis, or do I want the new time frame with the lower cost basis? And you can make that decision when you move the asset in. The way that we normally work with people is we just list the cost basis at which they purchased it, the date on which it's transferred, the wallet address that they're contributing, along with the LLC, or along with the amount of the asset that's in that wallet. So if that's interesting, if you guys think that would be of a benefit to you, we structure those. There's other people on the market that help people do this at this point as well. I would say we've done more than anybody else, close to 10,000 LLCs for people to be able to manage their digital assets in a holding company. We structure those in Wyoming. It gives you anonymity, gives you creditor protection, There's, charging order protection there in Wyoming if you're maintaining all the administrative components for your LLC, which we help people do. So it's an ongoing thing, very simple, make it easy through the app that we have. But that'll help you maintain the creditor protection, the anonymity, and then, you can't offset all your taxes. That's a myth, but you do have the full breadth of the tax code if you are taking profit inside of a corporation versus in your personal name to be able to offset the income that you made. So there are some other things that you can do there that are not available to you if you are just doing it, out of your personal portfolio. But if any of that interests you, you can go to dag.com, go over there to the services page, and you can find the LLC formation. Or if you just want to talk to our team, you can email info@dag.com, and they'll walk you through, the benefits, pros and cons for you and your situation. Normally, $50,000 to $80,000 invested in crypto is kind of where we see people start to entertain that. If you're below that amount, cost to benefit may not make sense. All right. We'll get into the questions tonight. Again, appreciate y'all taking time out of your Wednesday to come hang out with me. And again, we'll hang out probably maybe another hour or so. Jeff, my man, he says, thoughts on Theta and Theta Fuel. What's your before PA wristwatch and after PA wristwatch? I love you all. So I actually made a ton of money on Theta. I did not hold it long enough. When it got to $1 in 2021 is when I sold. I should have held on. It went to $15. I bought it at, I think 9 cents, 7 or 9 cents is where I bought Theta, and it made a bunch of Theta Fuel. I've said this before, but I watched Digital Dave, who was, I don't even know if he has a YouTube channel anymore, but he was making videos back then, and he was in Thailand. He had retired off crypto. Was in his mid 50s, and he was big on Theta. So that's where I kind of got the lead on that. I remember Kevin Cage putting out a video, and he talked about Quant, and it was like $7. Pulled the trigger on that one. That one did pretty good too. And I consolidated all into XRP in 22. But yeah, I think they have a really good product. I don't know that they're going to get the adoption or traction in the market. I think that they probably would have at this point if they were going to. I think YouTube probably figures it out and implements something of their own, or they buy Theta. And again, we've talked about that, like with Stronghold. If Stripe were to acquire Stronghold, that could be a big move. But outside of that circumstance, the players that I don't think are going anywhere. They're very aware of this stuff at this point, and they're implementing their own systems. And then wristwatch, pre and post. I actually have never bought a watch. I look at watches all the time. My wife gives me shit about it. She would much rather me spend it on a horse than a watch. So it's probably going to be post price appreciation wristwatch for me.
Post new horse wristwatch.
I have to buy the horse first. She just said that, and then I can get the watch. Depends on where the price goes. I'll say it that way. I kind of want Patek Philippe Calatrava. There's a couple Omegas that I would like. I don't know. I like classier stuff, things that's a little bit less understated, and things that like people that are into watches would know. Everybody knows Rolex, right? Like I may end up with a Batman. We'll see if that plays out. But yeah, I don't know that I would buy myself a Rolex. I think that, everybody knows what Rolex is. I like things that people that are into stuff, they know what it is. And then somebody else that sees you on the street, they're like, they have no clue. Right. So that's where I'm headed. And then there's, I think it's the Tribulon. There's like a 2018 or 2017 Patek that went for like $600,000-$700,000 grand. So if things really go where I think they're going to go, then that may be the celebratory watch that I get for that event. And this is the other thing I'll say. People might look at that and say it's frivolous, and I would agree to an extent. in real life, you don't get trophies, right? Like when you accomplish something and it's cool and it means something to you, and it's also a family heirloom that you can pass down to your children for an event that happened in your life that was significant. People will get watches for weddings. People will get watches for their child being born, big life events, things that matter, right? To commemorate those events. I think that those things are worth it, and whatever that trophy is for you, some people it's a nice car, some people it's a house, some people it's all kinds of things. But you can look at that, and every time you look at it, you get to kind of relive some of that success or gratification or that moment that something came through big for you. Kevin O'Leary does this with different deals that he closes, and obviously he has a crazy watch collection at this point. But I think that it's kind of like tattoos for me too. And again, I'm not telling anybody else what to do with their body or how to spend their money. Okay, this is just me. I think it needs to have some significant meaning for you to do that. I have one tattoo, it's on my back, and it has a very specific meaning to me, and it's the only one I've ever gotten. So, I don't know if I'm going to Brad Garlinghouse it and get an XRP tattoo, but I think I can do it with the watch, right? Like that would be good enough for me. So appreciate the question. I'll go ahead and jump into the next one here. Behind the Badge film, they say, evening, Jake. I heard you say that you and your wife are into equestrian things. Punk Carter is a good family friend and was at my wife and I's wedding. Have you guys ever been riding out there?
Hey, I know who that is.
My wife knows who it is. I have no idea, but she thinks that's cool. So she's sitting over there, and she says that's cool. So she knows. My wife won't brag about herself, but I'll brag about her. She is the most knowledgeable person I have ever met when it comes to horses and dogs. She knows anything and everything that you could possibly want to know about both of those. I've encouraged her to start a podcast and talk about all that. She's like, people don't want to listen to my voice, but anything and everything I know about horses, I've learned from her. And she knows far more than.
Punk Carter trained that smart aristocrat mare that we got from Jerry when I was a kid.
Oh, okay. So
Small world.
She said Punk Carter trained
the
smart aristocrat horse that she got from Jerry, which was a family friend when she was a kid. That he's got some big money. He's into multifamily real estate and does really well. So good to know. Small world, like she said. Behind the Badge also says, by the way, I joined the Beyond Broke Mastermind Moon tonight. I don't know, there's a lot of lore and things out there that allude to the fact that we're on the precipice of things moving here. We will see. I think results will speak for themselves when it all plays out. But on that point, post price appreciation, cost of the mastermind is going way up. It will be invite only. Would be much more exclusive than it is now. So, and anybody that's already in there just keeps their same price tier. So if they want to move up in different levels and participate in different things, they're absolutely, locked in for those prices. So if that's something you're interested in, if you want to try it out, all you got to do is go over there to beyondbroke.com and use the code beyondbroke, all capitalized, number 1, and then MO like Mary Oscar, get you the first month for $2, month to month, no contract. Over 17,000 people still continue to hang out there in the mastermind because of the value we provide. So I think it's probably going to be, there's a few other masterminds that I've seen that I think are going to be of the echelon of the individuals that we have in ours. Tiger 21 is one of those. If you haven't ever heard of that, you can go Google it. I've got about 3,000 members. Maybe it's more than that now. And, I have different kind of pack leaders all over the US and globally. You have to have at least a $20 million net worth and at least 5 million liquid to join that group. They're very particular about who gets into that. I think that that's going to be the caliber of people that we have in our group, and we'll have close to 17,000 of those. So pretty excited about that, and that's why we were going to make it much more exclusive post PA, and also to protect everybody that's in there. So again, if you want to be in that type of group, post price appreciation, highly recommend you get in there now before we lock it down. Val, he says, Mr. Jake, if XRP is designed for cross-border payment transactions, I attempted to transfer XRP to USD to European exchange from Kraken and Tangem, but was unsuccessful. Please explain the process and why. Not sure what your issue was. So the way that this works is the value will flow through XRP on the network. It has a decentralized exchange on the network. So any issued assets on the XRPL and side chains would be facilitated through the settlement of XRP. So what that means is the DEX will route it. So if the other counterparty wants something else on the other side of the transaction, let's say, you're exchanging USD to euros, okay, and you want to send a payment that lands in another country in that currency. Today, banks have to lock up money with whatever counterparty bank they trust in Nostro Vostro accounts in order to be able to facilitate that transfer. So they lose a lot of money, and that's why they charge high fees for wires. And it takes a while to settle over there. With this, they would exchange it for XRP, send the XRP on the network, it would settle in the other bank, and then they would exchange it immediately for euros or whatever else they were, wanting on the other side of that transaction. And that's how this works. If you use the DEX in order to be able to, facilitate the transfer. You tried to, I don't know if you tried to do this through, you said Tangem and Kraken. I'd have to really look at the process that you tried to elect and what you tried to do in order to facilitate that. Just sending XRP from one exchange to another, it normally settles in 2 to 5 seconds. Sometimes it takes a little longer for them to fund your account because you go into a pooled wallet and then they have to allocate it to your, specific account that you have with them, similar to like a routing number and an account number. Works the same way. With cold wallets, it's not like that. It's almost instant settlement, and you don't list a tag in the memo line when you're sending that payment because it's just direct wallet to wallet. You basically have your own routing number on the XRPL if you have your own wallet address in a cold wallet, is basically what that means. So again, not sure how you tried to facilitate that or what the issue was, but that's the way that it's supposed to work and how the banks and Ripple will use it. And R3. Legend, what's up, dude? He says OCC was required to publish guidance by the 18th. What happened? So that's their statutory deadline. There are really no rough effects or consequences for them if they don't meet the deadline. Unfortunately, I think that's sad that our system works the way that it does. They normally will come out within weeks is the normal cadence if they do miss it. He says, if the BOJ doesn't raise rates this Sunday, will it be at the meeting on Thursday, the 29th? I read on X that you hate Metallicus because it's a direct competitor of your company. Is that true? People come up with some crazy stuff. I don't even hate Metallicus. What I don't like is, you know what? I'm just going to stay away from it because, people will misconstrue my words. I would go do some research on the founder, Marshall, and the other stuff that's going on with that company. Like I tell everybody to do with everything, right? Go do your due diligence on stuff before you make investment decisions. You'll come to find some things, and then you can make your decision whether you think that that's a direct competitor with my company or not. Maybe, I guess, how they're thinking about that is they do offer a way for you to invest your XRP. It's definitely not institutional custody that they provide. And the interest rate is pretty high, which concerns us. And like I've mentioned before, we're going to be more on the conservative side for how we're going to be putting the XRP to work and have been putting the XRP to work. We've been very transparent about gains and losses and everything that's happened to the people that participate in our funds with them, right? Because they are institutional products that are actual securities offerings and done in a regulated way. But when it comes to, your previous questions about the BOJ, look, I don't control the BOJ. They have said that they are going to raise rates at the next meeting, and they're going to be much more drastic about that than they've been in previous meetings. So, we've seen some of the implications for that in their bond yields. The 10 years back up at 2.7 becomes kind of untenable for them to pay those returns if their yen continues to depreciate at the rate that it is, at around 3%. So if we do see a spike in the 10-year, I do think that they'll have to act very quickly. And that could be this week, it could be next week, it could be tomorrow. We'll just have to see. David Ripple says, have you watched the series Billions? From now on, when somebody asks you a question that you can't answer for whatever reason, your response is, I am not certain. That's actually a really good response. And I will take that to heart and start implementing that. I don't know, like I said before, I'm going to have to become a bit more institutional with these type of things as the company continues to grow. I won't be probably quite as relatable as I've been in the past, which makes me a little bit sad. And you do kind of have to hold back on what you actually think about things. You don't see Brad Garlinghouse or Larry Fink or any of the large players in the market doing anything like what I'm doing here. But I also think, there's a gap in the market for it. So I'm going to try to walk that line. But that is a good way to handle that. So I will take that to heart and start doing that. Roscoe, he says, hola. You just suggested watching other content creators. I follow Blockchain Backer, and he says XRP will never reach $1,000, let alone $100. Why is he wrong? I think Blockchain Backer is brilliant. He stays in his lane. He keeps blinders on. I can tell you at the first XRP Vegas that I met him at, he didn't know any other people that were on YouTube. He doesn't watch other people. He doesn't take outside information. He just stays in his lane of competency, and that's where he operates. And so that would be where I would say maybe I'm sure he hears this other stuff. I mean, he's alluded to it in some of his videos and other things. Everybody's entitled to their opinion on stuff. And to be honest, he's been pretty spot on with all of his calls up to this point. Now, previous performance doesn't predict, future performance. We talk about that in all the financial products that we talk about. And, there's a lot of people talking about MicroStrategy and Bitcoin and all these other things. What I would say is market dynamics shift, constraints change. And if you're not looking at the whole picture, it would be difficult to come to the same conclusions that I am. If you were only basing your outlook on previous chart movements, which is what Blockchain Backer does. The other thing I would say about BCB is I would love to see him use a logarithmic chart and go back to the move that we saw in 2017, 2018 for XRP, and then just factor that into his thesis of where we could go from here. He normally looks at linear charts. I haven't ever seen him pull up a logarithmic chart on his channel. And again, it's worked great for him. So I'm not knocking his sauce. Like, what he's doing is working. So I would just say that there are constraints outside of his control that may adjust market infrastructure and movement that he may not be factoring into his thesis. And I do think a lot of people, if we did see a move up to $10 to $13, would probably sell their XRP. I know he would, he would take 65% off the table, which, again, nothing wrong with that. But he does say he always leaves a moon bag because he's like, I've missed moves before. And he'll tell you that on his channel. He's like, look, I've learned to not take all of it off the table because there's situations in the past where I thought it was the top and it kept going. So I think he's probably going to be in that camp on this go too. He's positioned himself exceptionally well with the recent action in the market over the last year. He's called that almost perfectly. And I know that he's averaged into the market here close to the bottom. So we'll see what he does as we see price movement. He may not have time to exit if we see the type of movement that I think we're going to see.
He said, I'm not uncertain.
Oh, I'm not uncertain?
Oh.
Okay. I'll have to watch the Billionaires Deal series on Netflix or whatever platform that's on and see what you're alluding to. This person says, hey, Jake, does the Clarity Act have any implications on your DAG XRP interest-bearing product plans? How are things going with the Uphold partnership? Not really. We're going to continue to move as fast as the market and the players that we partner with will let us. I'm extremely confident that we will be first to market with a strategy for anybody that's quote unquote retail to participate in, that is a regulated process and product here in the US to be able to put their XRP to work inside of institutional custody with all the other, bells and whistles and stuff that we provide with the advisory. I would like to see, how the SEC is going to look at DeFi. I'm pretty confident in how I think that's going to work. The other thing I would say is, we are part of the digital chamber and we propose a lot of things to the SEC and they take our comments and implement those in our working groups. Also joining another association here this week that works with the UN and some other large parties to continue to advocate for certain things being put in place. So, you could imagine if we're in those positions to have those conversations and in the rooms, I don't want to say we have an edge, but we kind of know where the industry's headed. And we can do our best to work within the constraints and oversight and regulations that are going to be required for those different types of products. There's never going to be a for sure thing for, how fast we want to move. And we've got our compliance team and our executives on board with that. They understand that there's a certain level of risk in putting products out into the market before there is full certainty on things. But again, being on those boards and in the working groups in order to be able to advocate for what we think is best and how we're mitigating risk and, quantifying risk in these different products, I think bodes well. We've had a lot of conversations with the SEC on how all of this works and why we've structured it the way that we've structured it. And received a lot of really good feedback from that. So no, I don't think the Clarity Act really has any impact on our business because, I feel like we're setting the standard for how this stuff works. And then the Uphold partnership, Uphold's great. Still a lot of friction on onboarding for the trading and the bank account that we wanted associated within the app. If you want to manage your LLC, we do that end to end. There's no issue. There's no counterparty that we work with on that at this point. And so that's fantastic in the DAG app. But there's still, we've got a backlog from April that we still haven't worked through. And we are in July. So that has been very frustrating. We have a call with them, standing call every single day to see updates on that. They are working through it. They are implementing another system and process in order to be able to make that scalable, but it is taking much longer than, I think them or us would like it to. Rick Johnson, good to see you, dude. He says, TFH, what's happening here? XRP doesn't need clarity, but many nations passing are about to pass a type of digital clarity act. What's up here? I think they're forcing the US's hand. We've got Russia, we've got China, we've got Nigeria, we've got Japan. All these other countries are putting out regulation and making sure that they are ahead of the curve and doing what they need to in order to be able to adopt this. I think it's putting pressure on the US, which is a good thing. And again, I've revised my, percentages, I am back up to 10% that the Clarity Act will get passed this year before the August recess. And that's, basically because Cramer came out today and said that he thinks it's impossible. And the reverse Cramer is like a pretty good indicator. So with the catalysts that I do think are imminent here, there may be a situation where Congress is pushed into a position where they have to move quickly, and we might see it come across, but I do think that's going to be post price appreciation for XRP. This person says, ever notice crypto prices in Fox News with Maria always shows BTC, ETH, XRP in that order, conditioning the masses to normalize high XRP price per token? It's a weird thing with XRP on large media and publications. For a long time, they wouldn't even mention it, or they would call it Ripple. And now they've come around to the fact that it is XRP, that it's separate of Ripple after the lawsuit and everything that played out there. And also Brad and, other people at Ripple have been on those networks enough at this point and corrected them to let them know, like, stop calling it Ripple. We're a separate company. But yeah, I would agree. There's been a lot of symbolism or foreshadowing on different things that I've seen that could be perceived as conditioning for the masses to believe that XRP is, in the top 3 or the number 1 token, making Bitcoin an altcoin. Dragon Lord says, hello, legend. Recently started watching BCB for more TA material on his lives in the morning. Fudded me out. I believe in your thesis. Can't wait. Like I said, he has strong convictions in how he approaches things. I think he's brilliant. I think he looks at a lot of different market indicators. I would love to see him use an algorithmic chart in order to make, price predictions or where he thinks the market's going to go versus just a linear chart, and just factor that into his thesis. Also, I don't know, like, he can look at on-chain losses. He looks at a lot of different things that I think are really good indicators. But he doesn't look at, and I don't even know that there's a way you could quantify this, but total number of XRP on exchanges or in OTC desk or dark pools. And, if you had significant demand, which I do think that there's going to be significant demand all at one time and not enough supply out there in order to be able to, fill those orders, you would see the chart gap up to significantly higher prices. And that's where, I think him and I are a bit unaligned. Oilfield Broke says, is E. Warren BlackRock's puppet? If BlackRock told her to get it passed, Elizabeth Warren, would she do as instructed? I don't know. BlackRock has their own incentives. They definitely have significant impact on the market and, who they have in different positions and how they talk through things. Is Elizabeth Warren on that list of people? I don't know. I don't really think that Elizabeth Warren is going to be in Congress much longer. I think there's going to be a lot of changes politically and really kind of like how the whole system works in the next couple of years personally. So I don't think that's going to matter a whole lot. When BlackRock, launches their ETF, you'll know. Sofa King says, I can't wrap my head around if XRP hits 3 to 4 digits, the top people at Ripple would become multi-trillionaires, multi-centibillionaires. Explain this. Thanks. Yeah, I don't understand what people's problem with that is. I mean, we've already seen Elon Musk become a trillionaire, and there are plenty of families that are, they make Bezos look poor. They're just not public. Like, the public's perception is these are the richest people in the world. They're not. I can tell you they are not. But people with that amount of money are very private. They own infrastructure. They own full supply chains for different commodities and different things globally. They're not public facing. They have people that work at their companies that are public facing, and they own it in the background through multiple trusts and other structures. But all that being said, if you create that much value in society, the way capitalism works is you're rewarded for that. That is a good thing, right? Like, I don't understand why people would discount that. And they've already been very philanthropic. Everybody, that is an executive at Ripple has given charities and done other things. Other people don't agree with all the stuff that they've given to, Chris Larson giving to Kamala's campaign in XRP. You can have your opinions on stuff, but they are making donations. They are putting their capital to work. They are good stewards of that money. And I think that they'll be able to do a lot of good with, the amount of value that they will have in their portfolios. And yeah, they will be extremely wealthy, which is great. Like, you will be too. I've always come on here and talk about, stacking my pennies next to their dollars. That makes a lot of sense, right? If you can see where the market's moving, even if you don't have a whole lot of money and you see an asymmetric bet, and there's not a whole lot of downside risk for you, but there's significant upside potential, that's probably a good investment, or at least that's the way that I think about things. So all that to say, I also, again, I don't see an issue with it or why that's a problem. There are going to be plenty of people that we work with that will be centibillionaires when all this plays out. Bet Vegas says, hey Jake, does DAG app come with a bank account? I believe there is a trading account. You mentioned a bank account in the past. It does come with a bank account. You can wire an ACH out of it. We wanted to be able to roll out a debit card, which I thought we would be able to. Unfortunately, because it's a business account, this is a much more difficult process than I had anticipated. I thought, if you could do personal accounts and debit cards and credit cards, you could for sure do business accounts, debit cards and credit cards, but nobody else in the industry has done it. We've talked to Jim and I, obviously we work with Uphold. There's other people that have rolled out MasterCards and different things for retail products, but nobody's really done it for business. So, Uphold is working with us to be able to get those things to market, which is awesome. We appreciate them and their partnership on that. But yeah, as it sits today, the bank account that you do have there, just wire an ACH. It's not doesn't have a functioning payment method attached to it. All right. Amy, good to see you, ma'am. She says, hey, Jake, Beyond Broke Mastermind here. I appreciate you being part of the community. She says, can you explain the news today about the S&P 500 and why XRP wasn't included? I didn't see the news today about the S&P 500. They tokenized QQQ and they tokenized SPY. They aren't trading the full amount of those shares. They're not fully tokenized. This is a beta that they're running. And so you wouldn't need a ton of liquidity in order to be able to settle that on the back end. Once they tokenize, more of these things and there are larger amounts of value moving, and they're settling and reconciling on the back end of the stock market through the DTCC, they will require, enough liquidity to do that. And the only mechanism by which I'm aware that that's possible is through a significantly higher price for XRP. Like the champ says, if you don't think XRP will be the ESDR, how do you solve Triffin's dilemma? I mean, it is on demand, liquidity, and can exchange between cryptocurrency. Right, so it's the exchange rate peg. What you just listed there, or the definition that you gave, is an exchange rate peg. It's not an ESDR. The ESDR will be a form of payment that the IMF lends to different countries based on what they need in order to be able to fill their gap. So they're the lender of last resort, effectively. I did say that XRP could be in that basket of ESDRs, or that makes up the ESDR, and they would lend out whatever currency in that country needed in the ESDR. So if they needed XRP, they could take it on loan from the IMF if it was part of that basket. They will tokenize all of the currencies in there. So there'll be direct representations of dollars and euros and yen and yuan and the pound and all the other currencies that they currently have in the SDR. But again, the interchange between currency and on-demand liquidity, like you mentioned, is facilitated by an exchange rate peg, which is literally the abbreviation for XRP. Cuerva, again, good to see you, says Legend. Oh, we already did this one. All right, appreciate you on that. We are an hour in, so I'm going to go all the way to the bottom, and I'm going to work my way back up. So, if you haven't submitted a super chat, don't do it. If you do it, we'll find it. You can submit it. You can email it to info@dag.com, and they will get it over to me, and I will read it next Monday. This person says, time to cut off super chats. There you go. Appreciate you on that. Ryo says, hey, Jake, 1.2% of the rich list, not quite at your level yet. Master beginner level. LLC, Wyoming, good structure setup. Possible to work with you post price appreciation. SML bus owner looking for 5% return to live on. Recommendations. We will definitely have multiple products that we're able to diversify across in order to be able to get that type of return for people on their XRP. And I think that's going to be the main benefit to work with us, right? There's going to be many different products in the market, over the next year, 12 months, maybe a little bit shorter than that, 6 months by the end of the year, that do get rolled out with different vaults, DeFi, wrapping the token, different fund and securities offerings, liquidity pools, borrow, lend, all those things. And, a lot of people are new to this, like you mentioned, and it's difficult for them to be able to quantify the risks associated with each one of those types of things. And so working with an advisor like DAG Wealth, they'd be able to explain to you, like, we can allocate here. This is, how we're going to be able to mitigate risk, structure it the right way, hold it in institutional custody, have insurance against losses in case there's a hack on, one of these side chains or some of the other stuff that they build into DeFi. And you'll also kind of split your stuff across, a couple different ways in order to be able to get an aggregate return of whatever you're looking for to meet your cash flow needs, your cash flow that you need, for your lifestyle or however you want to live, and continue to compound your investments or grow them over time. I think, if you are doing sophisticated portfolio management, it becomes a bit more complex than just, cool, I'm going to park it in Doppler or Soil or one of these and then live off the money. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not going to say that that's, the wrong thing to do. I would just say that you're taking on a lot of risk by siloing that position with one counterparty, and you should really understand the counterparty risks that you are taking on if you're going to, just silo yourself in one product. I think most people, as this grows and they do have, more and more wealth in their XRP, a lot of these strategies are also going to start truncating. What that means is at a certain level, they're not able to produce the same type of returns. They're not able to put that much capital to work. And so there's going to be a reduction in how much they're going to be able to pay people. I'm confident that we will have the largest variety of anybody on the market to be able to put your crypto to work. So if you're with DAG, we'll be able to advocate on your behalf. We've already been able to do that and work with a lot of different parties to get a bunch of different strategies so that you can put all of your XRP or whatever portion of your XRP to work that makes the most sense for, your long-term goals and your outlook. I'm going to butcher that name, so I'm not going to say it. It's a legend, King of XRP, Beyond Broke Mastermind DAG client. If XRP goes to 3 digits, when XRP goes to 3 digits in the short period, would that not create a cashing out squeeze because of slippage where connected sellers secure high prices resulting in a crash and later sellers miss out? There will definitely be slippage in the market. And that's why, I think some people are going to be caught off guard with the volatility. A lot of people say, I'm going to cash out, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that. To your point, in that situation, there may not be enough orders to be able to fill those gaps. Now, the DEX on the XRPL helps with that a lot because it can interchange with anything, and it will route payments and, exchange the XRP for whatever you need. And if they have adopted that on the back end and there's issued assets on the XRPL, you could cash out into those fairly easily. So like ROUSD, if Ripple were to acquire Circle, USDC, things like that, right? So yes is the answer to your question, but I do believe that there'll be a period where it stabilizes, because I think that the demand is going to be unquenchable. Like, you won't be able to satiate the demand for XRP. There will be buyers in the market, whatever price is required in order to be able to help sellers sell at those prices. I think it'll just be a much higher price. I think it'll gap to like 90 or $100. And then we'll see things kind of move from there. Once they start using it, it'll continue to compound and grow. At least that's my thesis. A Alpha says, Jake, what's up, bro? What's going on, brother? Nigerian Ninja here. What stops XRP from fluctuating during utility? Will the price have to be fixed pre and post transition of money? Say hi to the tea lady. So the consistent volume that's going to be moving over the network for the back-end settlement of the FX market, SWIFT, and the back-end settlement of the stock market and other markets as well, there'll be enough volume to maintain a high stable price for XRP. The other piece is the escrow. So you've already seen Ripple do this. They sell enough onto the market in order to be able to maintain price stability. That is the function of the escrow. That's what it's there for. So as that's transitioned to whoever's going to have it and manage it, maybe the IMF, maybe BlackRock, maybe another power, or there might be multiple people on that help coordinate across it. They will sell onto the market in order to maintain, price stability as they need to, or buy off the market in order to be able to maintain price stability. Because it does need to be a high stable price for banks and institutions to adopt it, and then also for it to facilitate value transfer and settlement. All right. We got all the thanks to be the most high. Cool name. They say, when I transfer cryptocurrency from 3 exchanges to Wyoming LLC, does it have to be on a cold wallet? And do I need to buy cold wallets for the different cryptocurrencies and exchanges? What's the minimum minimum you have to own in order to work with DAG? So 50,000 XRP, or at least $500,000 in total portfolio value, and that can include your traditional assets. We can do stocks, bonds, all the other stuff too through our Altruist platform. We've got about 50 million that we manage over there for our current clients. So if you do have traditional assets and you want them, all in one place with your crypto, we can do that. When it comes to cold wallets, I like Decent personally, but full disclosure, we're an affiliate for them. I get like $5 if you buy a wallet off of their website using our link. I've used them, in the past. I now have my stuff in institutional custody. I have a little bit on my Decent wallet, for some of the businesses that we have. Most of it's at Anchorage. But all that being said, they have the largest variety of digital assets that you can hold on Decent, and it's easy to use. The UI works good. It's got a biometric. That's the one I would recommend, but there are a lot of good products out there. There's Tangem, there's EliPal, there's Arculus, there's all kinds of stuff. So, take what works best for you. Each one of the wallet addresses holding the crypto is what you're going to contribute to the LLC from the cold wallet. So, you'll list that long list of characters and numbers and all that stuff, and that's what you're contributing. So it's not the device itself. So you could move it on to different cold wallets, wherever you could hold it, or you can, transition your personal account that you have on whatever exchanges to a business account and then do it that way. So there's a couple different ways to skin that cat. But if you want to work with our team, if you set up the LLC with us, we can help walk you through that. And just reach out to our team. You can do support@dag.com. We already did that one. It always moves me back down in the chat here. Here's a couple more. We got Fly Fisherman Jeremy. Good to see you, dude. Chairman Jake. Liechtenstein has used the Swiss franc for over a century, and Luxembourg uses the euro? Explain why either would switch to XRP. Thanks. Good question. So this was years ago. It's probably like 2019, 2020. You can go back and find some things that alluded to the fact that one of those countries would be the ones that would swap to XRP. Luxembourg is notorious, being a Swiss jurisdiction or city that, or Liechtenstein, excuse me. They are neutral, right? And that's kind of the whole point of XRP is it's a neutral bridge asset. It's not controlled by any counterparty. The Swiss have kind of sat in that position of, neutral to the world and allowed people to hold things at their banks there. That is why I believe that it's going to be one of those two that ends up being the one that adopts it. And like I said, there's some things that allude to that in the past also. Richie Gilbert says, can you comment on the AMM depth, where it needs to be and where it currently is, or the catalyst to increase AMM depth for the domino theory? The AMMs are a big piece of, full adoption for XRP. These are automated market makers. There are automated market makers on other networks. So Ethereum, Solana, a few others have it as well. But ours, I say ours, because I believe that XRP is going to be the AMM that ends up winning. Has a unique mechanism which allows people to defer taxes if you're participating in them. You do have impermanent loss or the chance of that, depending on if you one-side or double-sided pool. And you want to understand how that works if you're participating in AMMs. I know the gentleman that runs the largest AMM on the XRP. It's his token, crypto versus XRP. He's in Dallas with me. And I think the last time I talked to him, they had 15 million in liquidity in that AMM. They have daily users on their game, that trade XRP and their crypto. Large majority of people in Southeast Asia that participate in his ecosystem. Banks and institutions is what it's going to be. When they start to adopt this infrastructure in the AMMs for, everything that they're going to be using them for, that's when I think we're going to see the depth that we need it to be. And also, once we see the price appreciation for XRP, there's going to be much more liquidity in those pools. And then they will be able to facilitate things at a much greater scale than they currently can today. Marty, he says, Jake, the orator, not sure what that is. He says, what's your thoughts on Jim Clement and Brandon Briggs' prophecies and their visions of X and P? Interesting. Some people have said, like, I'm a prophet. I definitely am not a prophet. I don't proclaim to be a prophet. I just listen to other people that are smarter than me. I've been really blessed to be in certain rooms and have conversations. And because of that amalgamation of, things that I've participated in, I've been able to, think critically through that and put together a thesis. I don't know. I'm always hesitant on that side. Anybody that makes like religion or says that they're a prophet as their platform, there are prophets. There are people that see visions of things that are more connected than myself. And they probably, there's Nostradamus. There's a lot of people that have foreseen things happening. I don't get, that's not my game. I just look at things that exist out there, have conversations, think critically through things, and then put that together. So it's hard for me to conceive that that's a thing, because it's not something that, I have divine download for. But it's interesting what they're saying, and it lines up a lot with what I see out there. So maybe there could be something to it. Wager Rewards, good to see you. He says 90-10. You say 90-10, but isn't the passage of the Clarity Act before August recess literally impossible now that the House's last day in session is tomorrow until 9/14? Yeah, effectively, yeah, because they've got to go through the filibuster. They then have to push the vote to a full Senate vote at the floor. Then it's got to go to the House, and then it would have to go to the president's desk after all those things happen. So if they are on recess until 9/14, that's way far down the road. Like, they're going to be focused on midterms at that point. I don't know that we're going to get anything passed. Like I've been telling you guys the whole time, I don't want to say it's impossible. I don't use that word in my household, but not likely, very unlikely at this point, just with where things are at. So, and like I've said before, I don't think we need it for where we're positioned or where I'm positioned. I don't know where, I'm not trying to speak for anybody else besides myself. Jesus is Lord. Love the name. He says, David deleted the post. I don't know. I don't have my other phone, so I can't tell you. I'll tell you what he posted though. So he posted about gas prices, and he said they're super high. It was a reply to somebody else's post, so you might want to go check his replies if you didn't see it. But he has 589 on the regular unleaded that he's pumping into his car. Rick Johnson, he says, inside Chief Sitting Bull's TP, the Bank of Japan CEO visited, smoked 5 bowls, drank a lot of sake, got hammered. He bragged all the BOJ BMs have fat cryptocurrency holdings in secret. The reverse carry trade must look forced or insider selling or trading charges. They'll be rich. Yoshitaka Katao has talked about the secret asset on their balance sheet. So it's quite possible. Love to golf. Love the name. Beautiful. They say, why wouldn't the DTCC announce that they are buying all the available supply off exchanges to remedy liquidity? I feel the timing will follow the Clarity Act. Like we just talked about, the Clarity Act's not going to get passed. It's highly, highly, highly unlikely that it will get passed. I've been telling you guys that for a while. Nobody likes that answer, but that is the reality of the world that we live in. I was literally on Capitol Hill a year ago advocating for it when they passed it through the House the first time. And I was there the day that they passed the Genius Act, talking to congressmen and women trying to get them to do this. So nobody wants it to pass more than I do. And I'm telling you, probably not going to happen. So yeah, there will be a situation where there's significant demand for XRP all at one time that drives the price to where it needs to be, but it's got to be timed exactly when it needs to be timed. Postmaster says, the legend. What's up, dude? What do you think about Brad and Ripple's one-time doubling XRP? Anything above 1,000 XRP? I trust Brad. It just seems too good to be true. That is a scam. That is a scam. There have been lots of videos and posts and stuff over the years trying to get you to send XRP to somebody and they will double it for you. It's a scam. Do not listen to that. Don't send XRP to anybody. People are leery of working with us too, which I respect, by the way. There are a lot of fake accounts for me out there on the internet. There are a lot of fake accounts for other content creators out there. Just be careful on all that stuff. Only go through credible lines. Okay. So like, I am never going to message you and ask you for your XRP. It's not me. I don't have a Telegram. I don't have a WhatsApp. I don't have none of those channels. I don't operate on there. So just be aware of that. The only way that we're going to work with you is through email. And it's going to be a dag.com email. And you go to the website and talk to one of our advisors, talk to them on the phone, and like verify credentials, go through KYB, KYC, all the stuff that you'd expect from an institution. So yeah, anybody out there that is, trying to coerce you to send them XRP online, just delete it. It's a scam. Mark Morgan says, many ask me how I'm going to cash flow after price appreciation. Can you outline the possibilities? I kind of went into this earlier. I can't get into the specifics of products that we're currently working on. It's always bit me in the butt, in the past. We've been working on a yield product for a year at this point, which has been extremely frustrating. Anyway, there will be plenty of products in the market in the next 6 months. We're in active conversations with a bunch of people for a bunch of different things. And we will get many of them across the line in the next 6 months, and you'll be able to diversify across a couple different avenues in order to be able to create cash flow for yourself. One of the things, Mike Higgins came out and talked about the DRs the other day. So these are depository receipts against XRP. We worked with RDC to issue those. So if you want to go look up that press release from back in, I think it was like February this year, we worked with them to get that done against XRP. Now Ripple Prime is using those DRs, which is cool. A DR is a depository receipt. Most people are familiar with these. If you have a stock on like the Chinese stock exchange, the London stock exchange, that's not reflected on the US stock exchange. And so they create a QSIP that's basically a reflection of that in order to be able to hold it with a Schwab or Fidelity or, a Ripple Prime. And then they can issue liquidity against it. So that will be one of the ways that I think a lot of people do this on the institutional side is, they'll hold their XRP at a qualified custodian, issue a DR against it, and then be able to, margin that DR and be able to trade stocks or bonds or laddered treasuries or however they want to put that to work to generate cash flow. And I'm confident that we might be able to do the same for our clients. KT Baby, good to see you, ma'am. She says, hey, fam, are we ready? XRP to the moon. I'm ready. I'm more ready than anybody else. I can tell you that. Nancy, good to see you, ma'am. She says, hey, Jake, let's hear about you. It seems we're getting close to price appreciation. Our dreams come true. Please tell us about your experience when you hit price appreciation the first time and saw millions in your account. Life-changing. It's surreal. Go to dinner and look at your phone before you go to dinner and then look at it after and see it up a couple $100,000. It's just it's hard to conceptualize that. It's hard to remain calm. Emotions can be bad both ways. A lot of people get emotional when markets are down. Also, people get euphoric when markets are up. I would encourage people to go watch videos that are made for lottery winners. So there's, what do I do if I win the lottery? There's tons of videos on YouTube that talk about that. That'll give you some tangible, actionable items to do when this takes place. So, at the time, I didn't really have good advisors. Had I had good advisors, I would have called my attorney. I would have called my CPA or called my spouse. Those are kind of the three that you should probably talk to first off. Maybe your wealth advisor if you have one that deals with crypto. Just make sure you have a plan. Understand the tax implications. Be methodical. Hopefully you've done some pre-planning. You've set up some structures. You've been diligent to be proactive, before that's taken place. I didn't know about any of this stuff. I learned it all on the fly, and that's why, I'm trying to help other people be proactive because it wasn't a great situation I found myself in, and I had to rely a lot on other people to be able to guide me through that. So it's very exciting. It's also very scary, all at the same time. But you'll get used to it. That's the other thing I would say is, one of the main recommendations that a lot of people give in those videos is that you just sit on your hands for 6 months. Continue to work your job, continue to live your life, get used to having that type of money sat there, and don't immediately splurge and spin through it and buy a bunch of liabilities and, raise your lifestyle. And it takes a lot of discipline to do that. It's not an easy feat by any means. I would say that I've probably been a bit more disciplined on that than, people around me might like. But all that being said, those are some of the things that I would encourage you to go do and look at and learn about. But it's still going to be a lot of fun and very scary all at the same time. Care Trade, I love it. They say, Jake, male 23, 5'10", 250. Any tips on weight loss going into the rest of the year? I want to start getting back into bodybuilding for fun as well. Where should I start? Thanks, man. Great question. So I'm assuming you are probably 30% body fat, 25 to 30% body fat if you are 250 pounds at 5'10", 23 years old. The way that I've seen people be most successful when trying to lose a significant amount of body fat in a short period of time, definitely want to weight train. Sounds like you already have a foundation in that. You may have more muscle tissue than I'm giving you credit for. If you do, that's great. I would continue that practice. I like doing supersets when I'm trying to lose weight. So do like back and chest, or bis and tris, or shoulders and calves, or superset quads and hamstrings, kind of like body parts that are on either side of your body. And you can do one set and you can kind of go back to back in order to keep your heart rate up while you're training. Low intensity, steady state cardio. Get 10,000 steps a day. If you can do that, you will lose weight. Just don't overeat. Prioritize protein. So, try to eat your body weight in protein every single day. If you can get, 1.3 to 2 times your body weight, then you're really doing good. Protein takes 30% more calories just to digest it than, other macronutrients. So I also like to refrigerate my starches. So if I'm going to eat potatoes or rice, I will refrigerate those overnight instead of eating them fresh. Could it give you some, bacteria? I would leave it in there for a couple days. I would eat it next day if you're going to do that, but it does create resistant starch in the carbohydrate, which is great. It reduces the calories like 30 to 40%, and actually is good for your gut biome and the bacteria in your gut. The way that I've seen, I dieted a lot of people down from like 280 or 300 pounds down to like 180 or 200 over 6 to 8 months. And for males, what I've seen be most effective is fasting every other day. So, I like dinner with my family. It's a meal for me that I enjoy, and there's a social aspect to it. So I would fast dinner to dinner. So if you eat dinner at 6, 7, 8 p.m., that's the last meal. The next day you don't eat again until 6, 7, 8 p.m. when you have dinner. Females is a little more difficult because their hormones kind of fluctuate over the month. So male testosterone tends to be pretty steady, especially at a young age. You're in a good spot. You don't want to go keto completely. It'll spike your SHBG, or your sex hormone binding globulin, and that'll bind up your free test and make it more difficult to gain muscle tissue or recomp. So I like to include some carbohydrates when you're dieting down, but primarily protein, vegetables, and fats outside of whatever window you're going to be training. So I would weight train on the days that you don't fast. Weight training on days that you do fast, you're going to break down muscle tissue and not have the protein to rebuild it. So, if you're going to fast, 3-4 days out of the week, the other 3 or 4 days, I would train on those days. And you can actually eat a little bit more. You can eat above your TDEE on those days by like 1.2, 1.3%, because you're fasting the next day, and it'll actually raise your metabolism. So if you fast longer than 24 hours, your metabolic rate actually starts to drop. But between 18 and 20 hours, you actually get an uptick in your metabolism. You have norepinephrine and adrenaline that kick in and actually make you want to move around and go get food. It does take some discipline to fast. You want to drink a lot of water, make sure you're getting electrolytes, salt and other things to make sure that you're okay during that period of time. You're not going to die. At least I hope not. I'm not giving you medical advice. You go talk to your doctor too. But that's the way that I've seen people be very successful in losing large amounts of body fat and getting lean and muscular in a short duration. I was way off topic, and that's my other expertise outside of the stuff that I talk about most of the time here. Lee's now says, what cold wallet do you recommend? Decent is kind of the one that again, we're an affiliate. If you use our link, we get like $5, but there's a lot of good ones. There's Tangem, there's AliPal, there's Arculus. Go do some research, but Decent's my favorite. Silva Domain says, if Clarity passed before reverse carry trade, what would price be? Not worried about it because that's not going to happen. Till, thank you, sir. We have all kinds of different topics over there in the mastermind. So if you are interested in sports, if you're interested in, health and fitness and wellness, because like I will say this, post price appreciation, the money's going to be there. But if you don't have the health and you don't have the relationships, like what good is it? So I think that that's a huge value add that we provide in the community. We have, some doctors in there. We have people that work with pro-hormones and SARMs and peptides and all kinds of stuff in order to be able to help regulate hormones. Hormones are the base for everything, health-wise. So if you want to learn more about that stuff, or you have some achy joints and different things and you need some BPC, 157 or, Rad 140 or all the other fun stuff that people talk about on that side, and you don't understand what those things are and you want to learn about them, we have all that there in the mastermind alongside, all the financial education and business resources. So highly recommend going out to check out the group before price moves. You can go over to beyondbroke.com, use the code beyondbroke, all capitalized #1, and then MO like Mary Oscar gets you the first month for $2 there in the group. John, he says, Jake Elise and the tea lady, not enough to get into institutional custody, being seamlessly close to PA, start an LLC. If you don't have enough to get into custody, if you don't have at least 50,000 XRP, that's up to you. We've had a lot of people be proactive and go ahead and structure an LLC. We did reduce the price, so it's only $1,500 to set it up with us. And then, we have the monthly payment of $100 that, make sure that you have continuity and all the administrative documents and everything to maintain creditor protection. We'll continue to add to the app too. You'll be able to get access to a lot more stuff than we currently have today over the next 6 months. So if you would like to do that, yeah, be proactive, but just weigh cost to benefit. If you think you could, eke out some more XRP with that $1,500, maybe do that instead. Again, like that doesn't benefit us, but I don't like hard selling people. Very relationship driven. I want people to do what's best for them and their family, and for us to provide products and solutions in the market that make sense for people when it makes sense for people. So with the, kind of what you stated here, you could probably wait till post PA and be fine. David, he says, thank you for everything, brother in Christ. Amen. Do you have tremendous courage to stand on your convictions and take the abuse that you do. I am one of the million lives you will make financially free. Jesus loves you. Thank you, David. I really appreciate the kind words and the prayers. It's part of it. I like I said before, I feel called to do this, and this is the impact that I want to have. And in order to do that, I have to come out here and share my interest and my opinions and all the things. And yeah, I do believe we'll be able to help, I'm hopeful over 1 million people, but that's the goal there in the mastermind. Amber, she says, Jake, appreciate you. What is the difference between Kraken and Caleb and Brown? Caleb and Brown, you have a dedicated broker that you can call. They have good service. The trading fees there are going to be exponentially more costly than what you're going to pay at Kraken. Kraken Pro, I think, gets down to like 20 basis points over a certain amount for trades. Caleb Brown's going to charge you 3 or 3.5%. So, if you do plan to trade, buy, sell, do anything with your crypto, Kraken's going to be a lot cheaper. But some people do want the ability to call somebody, and they got to pay those people. So, just whichever one you want to do. With us, you kind of get the best of both worlds. So our trading fees are 10 bips, so the lowest out there in the market. And then also you have your advisor that you can call. But we do charge AUM fees, right? So, if you are going to sell your whole position, and you're willing to pay 3.5% to Caleb and Brown, we would be, 2% for the AUM fees, or actually probably a lot less than that, depending on the amount that you're working with us. If you have over 5 million, it drops to 50 basis points. If you have over 10 million, it drops to 40 basis points. And again, each sell or trade is only 10 bips. So, post PA, a lot of people are going to have more than $10 million. We're going to be a far cheaper solution to work with than either Kraken or Caleb and Brown. But again, there's a lot of people out here in the market, a lot of people providing good products. Everybody has their own, what they want out of a relationship. And so no right or wrong answer there. All right. Marty, he says, hi, Jake the Great. Good to see you. My prayers for you and your family, especially the tea lady. I refuse to believe that Ripple will have 2-digit assets worth $1 or so over time. Can you speak to that? I refuse to believe that Ripple will have 2 digital assets worth $1. Yeah, I think XRP has to be a substantially higher price in order for RLUSD to work the way that they want to at scale. So, yeah, I'm with you. And thank you again for the super chat, the 589 super chat. Rodney says, which Old Glory account do you suggest? They have a business crypto account with larger fees, ISA, smaller account with lower fees, be good enough. Depends on the amount that you're going to be moving through it. I don't mind paying a little bit more for a bank account, just to establish a relationship and, know that things are going to be good, but that's up to you. All right, we're going to grab one more here and then we're going to wrap it up. We got Like the Champ. He says, if you don't think XRP, we already did that one. I think I got through all of them. I'm going to go all the way to the bottom. And if there is one here, I'll grab it. Mo Benny says, hi, you're welcome. Can you please explain how the escrow works and how it's released? Mainly, would it help the price? Great question. And I, again, appreciate the super chat. So as it sits, Ripple originally escrowed 50 billion XRP. I think that there's currently a circulating supply of 62.5 billion XRP. So that would mean that 37.5 billion are still in escrow. They release $1 billion each month, but only about 300 million of that gets put onto the market. They tend to re-escrow about 700 million on the backside. They've got over 50 different wallets that Ripple controls that the escrow gets distributed to. They use that in order to be able to maintain price stability on the market and also fund their business. I don't make any bones about that. A lot of people will tell you that, they're using retail to fund their business. They kind of are, but they're also working to advocate for XRP for its actual adoption. So there's no other company that does that. And I'm happy that they're making enough money to be able to fund the acquisitions in order to be able to get institutional adoption of the infrastructure that they work with, right? So that's how it currently exists. I do think that there'll be a transfer of who controls the escrow post price appreciation. And it also does help price. So if you look back to the chart in 2017, 2018, when they escrowed 50 billion, that's when we saw the price move because there was significantly less supply on the market or perceived on the market. You can use the escrow function yourself. If you want to use the XRP toolkit, you can download it, attach your wallet, escrow, time lock your XRP to come back to you at a later date. But yeah, I think that there could be it definitely helped move the price to where it's at now, and also will help maintain price stability in the future. All right. I know I missed some super chats here again. If I did, please send them over to info@dag.com. Again, we would love to work with you guys on wealth management, insurance, estate planning, your taxes, all that stuff. If you need help with those things, or you just want some additional advice, or you want partners in your jurisdiction, if you're not here domestically in the US that we have vetted and we've worked with, all you got to do is go to dag.com. And you can go find all the trusts, all the LLCs, the wealth management, everything that we do there makes it super simple and streamlined for you guys to get access to that. Or you can just email us at info@dag.com. And if you want to join the mastermind, we would love to have you in that community as well. You can go to beyondbroke.com, use the code beyondbroke, all capitalized, the number 1, and then MO like Mary Oscar gets you the first month for $2. And again, we're locking it down on the other side of price appreciation. It will be invite only, and it will be much more expensive. So if you want to get in there and lock in prices and make sure that you're good to go, if we are going to see things move here, I would recommend you do that sooner than later. So I'm going to wrap it. I hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful night, a wonderful, wonderful week. God bless, and we'll see you on the next one.